Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Casey, and today we're going to get into my 24 in 2024 video. These books are books I wouldn't normally pick up on my own, which is why I put them on my challenge list. Books that you would see on lists of books to read before you die. Required reading in school books that I definitely passed on when I was in school. Influential books, those kind of things. So in no particular order, let's get into it. So first up on our list is Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Everybody and their mother had to read this book in school except for me. I missed this one. So from what I can tell, this book follows a young man coming of age story over a weekend of his, after he has been expelled from school and is coming home for like Christmas weekend or something like that. And all of his rebelliousness that happens that weekend, how he's like kind of like pity me, this incel behavior is what comes to mind when I read the synopsis on this book. Which I guess is why it's been banned in so many places, is he gets quite violent fantasies going in his mind. So it's quite short, really. It's a teeny tiny little guy. So this one I'm actually really curious about. I had absolutely no interest in reading this book until I read the synopsis, and it reminds me of someone I know. Like, it reminds me of a person I used to work with, who I'm not going to name because they'll get very upset. I've got to read it now. Next up on our list is Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. Cervantes is there. OMG. Our list is Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes, and this is widely received and acknowledged to be the first modern novel ever written. It's over 400 years old. And just look how like perfectly floppy this book is. It's so big. It's so chunky. Chunky boy. I love me a good chunky book. And I'm fine with that, by the way. I'm fine that it's this chunky. It follows a young man who has read over and over again stories of chivalrous knights caught up in romance, and he decides he's just going to be a knight now. He's going to travel around, be a knight. He pretends that he's in all these fantastical situations and whatnot, and that's what I know. That's what I know. Now, the reason I wanted to put this on my list is because there is a song called Dolcellena. Closure in Moscow. So there's a band named Closure in Moscow that did a song called Dolcellena, and apparently she is a farm girl in this book, and that's where they got the idea for that song, for that girl, for that story in that song. And I love that song, love that band. So that is why I'm so curious to read it. I know it's probably gonna be like one page in this book, but I'm gonna read this whole book just because I need to see Dolcellena as he sees her. That's it. That's my goal. Move on. Okay, next up on our list, we have The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Look how pretty this book is. Like, the sprayed edges and just everything about this book is gorgeous. I know a lot of people have this copy, but I'm still like flabbergasted over how cute it is. So, The Picture of Dorian Gray, popular Gothic novel, has been for a very long time. Signature novel for people who read a lot, and somehow yet I didn't read this book. I've seen bits and pieces of the movie, but like haven't read the book, and that's just kind of a shame. It's just kind of really tarnishes my reputation as a Gothic person, and two, a person who reads. This is just shameful at this point. So Dorian Gray, the character himself, he isn't aging. He doesn't age. He has a portrait that ages in his place. And meanwhile, he gets involved in all this like debauchery and sensualness and reasons that conservatives ban the book. And I'm really just like poking the bear. I really enjoy it. But I'm really afraid that just like when I read Frankenstein, when I read Dracula, classic Gothic novels, I didn't love them because men cried the whole book. The whole book about those two books was, and I read them back to back. So it was men crying, 500 pages worth of it. Please do not let this book be fucking 200 and whatever pages of a man crying. Please don't let it be that. I'm excited though. Okay, next on our list we have The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This book always reminds me of, I know it's more like a summer book, but it always reminds me of New Year's Eve with the champagne and like the fireworks and the meme of Leonardo DiCaprio, you know what I mean? So I kind of want to read it for New Year's Eve. Like last year for New Year's Eve, I think I read Jaws. Such a New Year's Eve book. I think I read Jaws in one day last New Year's, or the New Year's before, one of those. So we follow in this book is J. Gatsby, and this takes place in the Roaring 20s, where everybody's, you know, doing their speakeasies and having parties, and he's throwing parties, lavish luxury parties at his house in the effort to attract Daisy Buchanan, who is across the lake, and he's obsessed with her. I have seen parodies of The Great Gatsby, but never read the book. Fell asleep during the movie. I just couldn't do it. It was incredibly boring. But I'm hoping, one, it's very short. Teeny tiny. This is smaller than my journal. So I'm hoping that I will actually appreciate the story as it's slowly laid out in front of me. I don't have high hopes, though. I feel like this is going to be one of those classic books where it's just lost on me. Like, you had to read it in a different period of your life, and I didn't do that. Let's hope that's not the case. Okay, next up on our list, we have The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. And The Secret Garden is one of my favorite childhood movies. It is about some spoiled brat-ass kids, at least two of them, one hardworking little guy. And, you know, Mary is, her parents have been killed. She's orphaned. She's sent off to live in this English estate with her uncle, who's very reclusive, very dowdy, very sad. Everybody in this building is sad. And she meets her cousin kind of sneakily, Master Colin, who is sickly, and through finding the secret garden and restoring it, it restores Mary, it restores Colin, it restores the uncle. Like, I do know this story, I just never read it, and it's like, I really want to. Like, it's like a precious childhood nostalgia thing for me. I have to. This is just one of those books that I wish I would have read as a child, and I'm absolutely taking advantage of it and reading it now as an adult, and I'm super excited. Now, taking a break from all the leather-bound editions of books I have, I swear I didn't do that on purpose, and it's definitely not all the books I own. It's just really a matter that they were all in the same pile. But taking a break from those leather-bound copies and moving to Animal Farm by George Orwell. This book is about animals that take over a farm after they have been mistreated, and it was meant as like a satiric take, a criticism of the Russian Stalin-esque era, and kind of works for like all of the totalitarian governments and all of the people who think they know everything and treat you like shit because they can. This is that. This book is gonna hit me in the face because the overall theme, I think, is like the grass is not greener on the other side and you don't know shit, and it's definitely gonna hit me in the face at the end. Moving right along, next on my list is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I know a lot of you people are like dropping your jaw right now and like, how the fuck have you not read this book? It is a gothic romance classic, favorite of so many readers, and I was supposed to read it in my senior year of school and got 35 pages in and said no. That was in 2009. So this has been on my TBR, this same physical copy, since 2009, and it's not even the oldest book on my TBR. How sad is that? So we follow Catherine and Heathcliff, romance, brooding romance, gothic atmosphere, all those things. You would think I would like this book, so I'm hoping adult me can appreciate this book more than teenager me, 18-year-old me could, because I'm 32 now, so tastes are very different. I'm hoping I can appreciate this book. I remember part of the reason I didn't want to read it is because it's written with Cockney for some of the characters, and I was like, what the fuck are they even saying? I could not wrap my mind around it. Adult me probably can, and if I'm not really reading it too well, I think, you know, an audiobook might be a good idea for this one, so This has to happen. And it's on my winter TBR card, which I should make a video for. This is on my winter TBR card. It's very atmospheric for wintertime, autumn, that kind of thing. Think of the moors in England and the fog and dark clouds and, you know, Seattle. So, Wuthering Heights, Emily Bronte, classic book. Need to get it done. Need to get it off my TBR. Need it off my conscience. I just can't live with this book on my TBR anymore. Has to go. Okay, back from my intermission. I just had to take a break to go make more coffee. I can't make it through a video without making more coffee. But, like, I'm really trying to get into the cozy vibes right now, you know? Like, I live in South Florida. It's 72 degrees outside, and that's quote-unquote chilly here. So I'm, like, trying to cozy it up with a sweater, even though I'm still hot. And then, like, a warm, delicious coffee beverage. Like, really, really, really trying to get into the winter here. It's just, it doesn't exist, I swear. We get, like, 2 weeks worth of winter weather, and it's not even, like, congruent. Like, it's just all over the goddamn place. It's really pretty blue sky, though. Putting a coffee next to 200-year-old book, no big deal. All right, let's move on. So next book up on our list is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, the Queen of Dark Academia. I remember when this book came out in 2013, it was on every display table at Barnes & Noble. It was literally everywhere, and she's literally everywhere now with her, like, Dark Academia books being so popular on Book Talk and BookTube and Bookstagram and book social media, everything. So I've not really gotten into Dark Academia yet, but I thought, like, if the Queen of Dark Academia can get me into it, then it'd be worth reading for me. But if, like, I'm not into this book, that I'm not even going to bother moving forward with the Dark Academia trope, vibe, genre, whatever. So in this book, we follow a young man who has tragically lost his mother in an accident that he did survive. As an adult, he works in antique shops, and he inherits, through odd circumstances, a painting from his mother. And this painting has a weird magical pull over him, and it ends up getting him into some kind of sticky situation, bad social circle type of situation. Not a whole lot of detail on the synopsis on this book, but I guess it's all for the best. But she is a chonker, though. You see how, like, perfectly floppy and thick she is? This is gonna be a good, hefty read, I can tell. But, like I said, if it goes well, if I enjoy it, I'll invest in more of her books. I know, like, The Secret History is super popular right now, so we'll give her a shot. We'll try this one. Next up on our list is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. This book was meant to be a parallel to her own personal experiences going through a mental health crisis. And this kind of follows Esther, who is going to be experiencing some wrongdoings on the hands of the people whose care she is supposed to be in. When I think of this book, I remember the word, like, I'm reminded of the word hysteria and how women were treated with their mental health symptoms back during that age, and, like, oh, she's hysterical, lock her away, because women's emotions should be remained in check at all times. So this is gonna be maybe one of the books that I want to fight somebody while I'm reading. When I was reading The Sewing Girl's Tale, I wanted to fight Harry Bedloe's lawyers. In this book, I'm probably going to want to fight some doctors. I'm cool with that. Next up is The Color Purple by Alice Walker. Now, I just need to take a moment to say that when I think of books, this is what comes to mind. Like, how gorgeous and perfect is this book? Like, the sound. So satisfying when I think of books, like the perfect, like, reading in the park and, you know, looking really smart. Like, this is what I think of. This look aesthetic of this book right here. So in this book, it takes place in the early 20th century. We follow a group of black women, primarily Nettie and Celie, who are two sisters that were separated as children and have corresponded through letters over a period of 20 years. And this book is going to take us through pretty much the abusive, oppressive life that these women endure all the trigger warnings probably. The ones I were reading were just a long list. And I really don't do trigger warnings because I think it is so important to get offended. Books are one of the only places left where you can get offended, be upset, and it be a good thing. It's a good thing to understand, acknowledge horrible things that happen still, and get uncomfortable and be angry about those things. Don't accept those things. Don't justify those things. It's so, so important. That's my welcome to my TED Talk. The Color Purple. Next up is The Boy in the Striped Pajamas by John Boyne. Now, I have a box of tissues set aside specifically for this book. We follow a young boy who is being kept in a camp in the Holocaust during World War II. And that is all you need to know a book is going to be undeniably goddamn sad. So The Boy with the Striped Pajamas is one of 2 books that I'll be reading in January for Holocaust Remembrance. So let's just move right into the next one. So you may have been able to guess that the next book that I'll be reading, the other book for Holocaust Remembrance I'll be reading in January, is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. And it is narrated by Death himself. Takes place in Nazi Germany in 1939. We follow Death, who's watching a little girl who has stolen a book out of a graveyard, and her father teaches her how to read, and she becomes enamored with taking books, grabbing them from book burnings and people's libraries and just devouring them. Her family takes someone in and is hiding them in their basement. That really changes the way this little girl is viewing the world. So this is a renowned book. This is a book that's on like everybody must read before they die list. So many people, like when they do the 5-book challenge, is like a book everybody should read. Like this is often on that list. And it's on my list. I really am looking forward to, I'll probably read this one before The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. This is probably going to be one of the first books I read in 2024. So just keep an eye out for that. And next up on my list is Dune by Frank Herbert. This book is a TBR vet for me. My friend Bianca got this for me as a Secret Santa present a few years ago, and I still have yet to read it. When I did my 5-book challenge, the book that I keep putting off and need others' help to read, this is what I went with. And part 2 of the movie is about to come out. I still haven't watched part 1. It's still on my watch list. I refuse to do it without first reading the book. I haven't seen the old movie. I haven't seen the new movie. I will not do it until I've read this book. And it's a space opera, whatever that means. Soap opera in space, I really don't know. It's a sci-fi staple though. And I don't read a whole lot of sci-fi, but I really feel like I should. Like I really, really love fantasy, and I feel like fantasy and sci-fi go hand in hand. So I don't know why I keep putting this book off. It's not like, it's a chunky, how floppy it is. It's a chunky book. I think this is like 700 some pages, but this is not a thick book to me. Like I've read books way bigger. It's not the thickness that intimidates me. I think it's the subject matter and the world building because it is so vast. So this book is about Paul. It's on the planet Arrakis. He's like a chosen one savior type of trope. I don't know anything about this book. This is one, I feel like I'm not going to read this until the summer. Why do I feel like that's a thing? It's on my TBR cart right now though. It is. It's on there because it is a TBR vet. I need to read it. Poor Bianca bought it for me and I still haven't read it. I feel like a jerk. Gotta be done. Okay, next is the biggest book on my TBR for 2024. That is Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. Look how this book is bigger than my head. It is hella thick. It's almost 1,000 pages, which does not surprise me. I've seen the movie and it's like 4 hours of me wanting to slap the shit out of Scarlett O'Hara. She's the most annoying character ever put to screen, in my opinion. I got a feeling 1,000 pages is not gonna make me like her any more than I did watching the movie. But Rhett Butler, he's like so suave. Something about this book has to hit, right? Like it's been around for so long. It's made a motion picture that like out trophied The Wizard of Oz. They came out in the same year. Do you know that? That Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz were movies made in the same year. Fun fact. not nearly as controversial. The Wizard of Oz, this one is hella controversial. I feel your eyes rolling as I speak as to like the glorification of the antebellum South. And yeah, that's exactly what this book is about, is the glorification of the antebellum South and how that blows up in their faces during the Civil War and after the Civil War. Scarlet is a spoiled Southern belle brat and loses everything in her life. Literally everything. She is a toxic bitch. She's in love with her friend's husband, cousin, Ashley. She's in love with Ashley, who marries his cousin Melanie, and she pretends to be like Melanie's bestest friend forever. Like, yay. But is meanwhile trying to scheme her man, and she like never loses this obsession with Ashley. And you just want to slap shit out of her like the whole time. Like, girl, what's wrong with you? Like, you're a simp. You're a girl simp. What is your problem? It's going to be hard for me to read this book because I'm definitely going to want to slap the shit out of Scarlett O'Hara this entire goddamn book. But you don't buy a book this big if you don't intend to read it. Summer though. In the summer, this is going to take me like a month to read. In the summer, I'll do it. I promise. And next up on our list is Beloved by Toni Morrison. I want to read this book because they don't want me to read this book. This book is on I'm in Florida, and we have a lot of like schools banning books left and right. And they're trying to pull this one out of the libraries too. Like, what the hell is wrong with you people? I'm gonna read whatever the hell I want. As a teenager, I read whatever the hell I wanted. My parents like didn't observe what I was reading. I think they thought like, as long as she's reading, like let her keep reading. Like whatever she wants to read is fine. This is fine. This book is fine. It's been required reading in schools for a really long time until recently, where it started being banned for being quote unquote pornographic. And that's not at all what I would call it. Not at all. It explores the trauma of a young girl who, has escaped slavery to quote unquote freedom, even though she's not really free. She's haunted by the trauma of her past, the abuse that she suffered, the loss of a child. And it's gonna be a tearjerker. I got a feeling I'm gonna cry through this book. And next up on my list is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This was required reading for me in my 10th grade college English class, and I did not do it. I was a stubborn kid, and for whatever reason was out to get this book. Like, I'm not reading it, can't make me. I don't know why, it just was the way. I guess I was reading Twilight at the time, I was busy. So, we narrated by Scout. We follow the court case of a man who has been falsely accused of sexual assault and is being defended by Atticus Finch, which brings up the white savior trope, which is why this book has not been as popular these days as it was for decades and decades. And finally making up for lost time as to when I would not read this book in high school. And, teenage me probably wouldn't have appreciated the nuance of this book anyway. Adult me definitely will. This is like one of my sister's favorite books too. She's a classic literature girly. Like, she's probably read all the books I've been over so far. I should ask her how many of these books she's read. So this is one of her favorite books, so I'll finally get this one off of my list. To continue my theme of my college English class, we have The Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I did read this book in school, but again, teenager, you don't appreciate the same things as a teenager as you do as an adult. And this is one of those books that I feel adult me would put on their top 10 list. And just how badass is that cover, by the way? Like, the back with the boar is so fucking cool. Like, I could have gotten a different copy of this book for $4.99 on Book Outlet, but I paid 3 times the price to get this specific cover. Sometimes I'll do that, not always. But this is about some boys on a plane that has crashed. They're abandoned on an island, and they cannot keep society together. They try. They start out with a little bit of a society, but quickly devolve into absolute heathens. And one by one, like the innocence, the reason, all of that is lost to pure chaos, fear, just violence. This is a reread for me, but I still feel like it's gonna feel like the first time that I've read this. I've seen the movie, like the original movie from, you know, the black and white one from like what 50s or 60s or whatever, a bunch of times. So this is probably gonna hit my top 10 list. Summer though, another summer book. Okay, I'm switching back to cloth-bound, leather-bound books. So we have The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. Dumbass. Use it. Shawshank Redemption. Anybody? No? Okay. The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas is a classic adventure novel. Was inspired by Don Quixote. Now, the movie from like 1993 with Kiefer Sutherland and Chris O'Donnell, that is one of my favorite movies. I loved that movie as a kid. I had it on VHS. I watched it every time that I stayed home from school. You know, I love the man in the iron mask, even though the acting in that movie is such shit. D'Artagnan's the only one that can act in that movie, and I love Jeremy Irons so much, but like still doesn't bring home for me in that movie. Leonardo DiCaprio's a fucking joke in that movie. But I want to read all of the books from this series, from the Three Musketeers, All for One and One for All. I want to read them all, but I gotta start somewhere, and this one is a good old chunky book, but I love me a good adventure. I'm really hoping this one is good, because I read Treasure Island, which is the adventure book, right? Like the epitome of adventure books is Treasure Island, and I hated it. I hated it. Nothing happened in that book. It was so boring. Something has to happen here. It has to. And next up on my list is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This is actually only half of the book that most people would know. Originally it was published as 2 separate books, so this is just the first part. I'll have to replace this one at some point and get the full version, but for now this is fine. I don't know too much about this story, and it's probably not a bad thing really, because it's been adapted so many times. I don't know how I don't know this story other than it's about the 4 girls. But this to me just feels like, why does everything feel like a summertime book to me right now? This feels like I won't read it until summer, maybe spring. Maybe spring. I feel like I've been recording for hours. I've got 5 books left. I'm running out of light. Let's get the show on the road. Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence, another banned book, and it follows the story of a woman who is married to an invalid. He gives her permission to have an affair with like somebody of their same status, but she's into a working man, and they get into some raunchiness. This one's banned because of all the gratuitous sex scenes. It actually couldn't be published and the publisher was taken to court when it was originally published, which makes it all the more interesting. I read a review for it that, you know, if not for all the sex scenes, all the spiciness, that it has no plot. Who needs plot? Not me. Next books, I'm actually going to do 2 together, both by Agatha Christie, Murder on the Orient Express, and Then There Were None. I know this story, like I know how it ends. I've just never watched the movie or fully read it or anything like that. So a murder takes place on a train. The detective has to figure it out before the murderer strikes again. Typical mystery, right? And then There Were None. I know the original title. Don't come for me. Look it up if you need to. I understand this book's been canceled recently. I still want to read it. So I respect you, please respect me. So this book is the Mystery Island trope, kind of. So it just reminds me of a Scooby-Doo episode, like when I think about it. So people are invited to an island, to a mysterious house by a mysterious man, and one by one they start getting killed off, and they have to figure out who's doing it before they're all dead. Like the same book, different setting, I swear. But I've never read anything by Agatha Christie, so I'm hoping that these will be like a gateway to getting me into her mysteries. If not, no love lost. And next up is 1984 by George Orwell. I know, I hear the groans and the what the hells and like, how have you not read this book already? Somebody who's so into dystopians, you think I would have read like the mother of dystopian novels, but I haven't. So 1984 by George Orwell, you know, Big Brother is always watching. It's a dystopian society. You have no freedom. That's what it is. I don't know a lot about the actual story or plot, and I don't want to know. The premise is good enough for me. I need to do this one kind of ASAP, though. It's a little bit shameful. that it's been on my shelf for like a year and I still haven't read it, but it's that book. You know what I mean? Like, it's a quintessential book that you have to read. If you read, you have to read this one. This and Fahrenheit 451 are two of the books that you have to read if you're a book reader, like, right? Like, you have to. So I will. I'll get to it. And finally, I feel like I've been filming for hours. Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Typical Bronte sisters book. Brooding, gothic, romance. Jane is an orphan. She takes a position as a governess. She falls in love with Mr. Rochester. Rothschild? What the fuck is this? You know, typical Bronte sisters book. Gothic romance, atmospheric, chilly, winter day vibes. Jane falls in love with Mr. Rochester. There's a dark secret in the house. She has to make a decision if she's going to live with this secret and live with this man or move on about her life. And this is another one of those like chonky books. This one I'm probably going to push off as long as possible. I am not a romance reader, but it's a classic. I guarantee my sister has read this book. I'm gonna ask. I'll make a short or something of all the books she's read with like a checkoff list. But this is a winter read. I know it's on my TBR cart right now. I probably won't read it till next winter, to be honest. I don't foresee me reading this anytime soon. This is the reason why we have this list, is to read the books we would not normally read, right? So, Jane Eyre, finally done with this list. Done with this list, done with this list. I've been filming for hours, and I'm losing the sunlight. I am almost out of sunlight. That's how long I've been filming. Ooh, I need coffee. Alrighty. Do I need coffee? Can you hear this? How fast I'm speaking? Oh my god. So, just curious, are you reading any of these books? Have you read any of these books? What kind of books are you reading in 2024? What are you looking forward to in 2024 in your reading life? I would like to hear all about it in the comments. And again, I love when people read along with me. If you want a buddy read, comment. We'll schedule it. We'll do a buddy read. We'll chit chat. I'm into all that. So, thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening to my rambling. I'm sure I went off on more than one tirade that will make it into the final video. Wish you all happy holidays, warm and cozy vibes, and I hope you come back and join me again for some more bookish talk, bookish things, bookish vibes, all things books. Bye.